Hey everyone, and welcome to Installation 00. Today I'm honoured to be working in collaboration with the highly esteemed Halo Canon. I've been a Canonite for many moons, and it's really surreal for me to now suddenly be in the privileged position to be able to work alongside another Halo YouTuber much more established and accomplished than myself. I'm humbled by this opportunity and keen to deliver content worth your views. Thanks for doing this, man. It's a pleasure to be working with you. So, in my side of this collab, we take a closer look at the Human Covenant War, and in particular the casualties inflicted upon the Covenant by humanity. And over on my channel you'll find Halo Canon's side of the same subject, looking at the casualties inflicted upon humanity by the Covenant. Be sure to check that out. But for now, let's get into it. The Human Covenant War started on February the 11th, 2525 and raged for 27 years, until its close on December the 11th, 2552. Very few people actually know the true scale of the devastation as a result of this nearly 3-decade-long conflict, primarily due to misinformation and propaganda campaigns run by the Office of Naval Intelligence to downplay the severity of the war and boost morale to an ultimately failing front. As such, it is all the more surprising and impressive to know that the war ultimately came to its end with humanity as its Pyrrhic victors. Given the Covenant were superior to humanity in numbers, firepower and technological advancement, it is a marvel of human resilience and a little help from a 7-foot-tall armoured war machine that humanity won it all. But just how many of their forces did humanity have to kill in order to win such an unbalanced war? What were the Covenant casualties? Well, to answer that, we have to know the population of the Covenant both pre-war and post-war. That is much easier said than done. I'll try to spare you the raw numbers as it's boggled my mind considerably over the past few days, but I'll give you the facts as succinctly as I can, and if done right, we'll not only know the Covenant casualties, but also pre- and post-war Covenant numbers, and hell, maybe even a kill-death spread. I will just say this, however. I have had to glean information from a variety of sources, as it isn't specifically said anywhere in the lore the Covenant's population post-war or otherwise. I have, where possible, dramatically underestimated exact numbers of troops involved, and overestimated scales to try to work in a kind of intended discrepancy, being a gross underestimation of populations. As such, the final numbers I give are thus likely much smaller than the actual fully accurate numbers in the lore, as it's yet to be released. And I will provide reasoning where possible, so let's get into it. Let's start with their population post-war. Trust me, it's easier this way. So it is on record on the Halobasterium, the estimated populations of the various Covenant species. It is worth noting that the Basterium was released on the same day as Halo 3 was, so as such, it is reasonable to assume that the numbers quoted are estimations based on the closing days of the war. It is also directly quoted that it is as accurate as possible under difficult circumstances of a lapse of system-wide record keeping. And world populations are quoted as the following. Grunts 320 million, Jackals 978 million, drones are unknown, Elites 8.1 billion, Brutes are 12.5 billion, Prophets are 23 million, and Hunters are 1.98 trillion. Now in regards to the Hunters, it is more likely that this number refers to the individual Letgolo worms. So given this, and bearing in mind that the Hunter is actually one of the rarer forms of Letgolo, I instead estimated how many Hunter forms this number of Letgolo could create. I took the average weight of a Hunter, factored out their armour's weight by dropping approximately 50% of their weight, and then divided this by the total number of individual Letgolos. This gave me the number of 14,375,000,000. Elites do actually have a post-war population, so we will factor this in as well. And with the Prophets, post-war, it is relatively well understood that the vast majority of the population lived on High Charity, which was ultimately infested by the Flood and destroyed at the close of the war, setting the Prophets as an extremely endangered species, if not extinct. So as such, we will disregard this population altogether.
Blasphemy!
Sorry, Holy One, I'm just running the numbers. So with those adjustments made, we get Grunts at 320 million, Jackals at 978 million, drones are still unknown, Elites are actually 3.9 billion, Brutes are 12.5 billion, Prophets are 0, and Hunters are 14.375 billion. So if we factor that into the calculations for the post-war population of the Covenant species, ignoring High Charity as it was destroyed and the few remaining functional ships, we arrive at the number 32,073,000,000. Now onto pre-war. The only population figure from the Covenant species homeworlds that varies based on time differences is the elites and the grunts. Elites are quoted at being 8.1 billion on Sanghelios, and because population control was forced upon the grunts due to their fast breeding speed, it is reasonable to assume that their population at its peak reached orders of magnitude greater than the most numerous species, being the hunter forms. So if I very conservatively say the population was a single order of magnitude greater than the hunters, around 28 billion, we can trust this figure is likely smaller than the reality of it. And to be clear, if you think this is a lot for a single species, consider humanity will hit 30 billion somewhere between the 23rd and 24th century in real life if our growth rate continues at its current rate. Pretty scary, huh? So that puts Covenant species population at, well, I tell you what, I'll come back to that. I don't want to spoil the big reveal. So grunts, 28 billion. Jackals, 978 million, just because we've not been given any other figures other than that. Drones are utterly unknown. Elites are 8.1 billion. Brutes are 12.5 billion. Prophets 23 million, and hunters 14.375 billion. High Charity is quoted at having a population of 7.5 billion. Drones' population comes into effect passively when we look at the populations across the ships, because they were mainly employed as maintenance personnel for the ships, which we will now look at. Stick with me here, I'll make it as quick and painless as I can. So there are 43 known and named Covenant ships at present in the lore, the largest of which being the CSO supercarrier Long Night of Solace, of which we know next to nothing about the crew or troop complement. Here is where volume comes into it. The size of the Solace in volume can be calculated by taking its length, width and height to find a volume and then promptly subtracting about 75% of it as a gross overestimation, since the ship isn't a perfect cuboid. So 29 kilometers in length, 11.5 kilometers in width and 3.6 kilometers in height, then subtracting 75%, gives us a volume of 300,150,000,000 cubic meters. Let's take this volume and remove 75% again to account for decks and bulkheads and systems and weapons and armor and vehicles and food nipples and everything else that a ship of this size may contain. That drops us to 75,037,500,000 cubic meters. The average covey is about 2 meters tall, 1 meter wide and 1 meter deep. Again, a gross exaggeration. Some are larger, some are smaller, but I'm averaging here, giving a volume of 2 cubic meters. This means that the Solace has room shoulder to shoulder for 37.5 billion troops. So let's massively underestimate and say that the CSO can carry 5 million troops. 5 million, and I guarantee you there'd still be an echo. In context, the Solace is larger and has more surface area than practically every megacity on Earth. If positioned above New York City, it would stretch from the tip of Manhattan all the way back to Yonkers. New York City, for the record, has almost 9 million people in it. The Solace is around 7 times taller than Freedom Tower. It's a hell of a ship. So 5 million troops for the Solace. Now it's just a case of scaling that for other ships. So for example, the CAS class assault carrier is practically identical in form, but it's 18% the size. Let's say around 20% to make it easy. That sits the CAS at about 1 million troops because it's a fifth of the size. We can just keep doing this for the other ships, scaling within reason until we have all likely underestimated troop complements for every single class. As seen here, the carrier holds 1 million, the cruiser could hold approximately 330,000, 89,100 for the corvette, 99,000 for the destroyer, about the same for a frigate, and obviously our CSO supercarrier at 5 million. Okay, so now we have to take into consideration the number of known ships of each class. The max number of known Covey ships that have names is 43 ships, so let's factor that in here. As you can see, the carrier, there's roughly 11 named and known ships. The cruiser, again, 11 named and known ships. Corvette, we know of 4. Destroyer, we know of 3. Frigate, we know of 13. And the supercarrier, we only know of the Long Night of Solace, just the one. 43 in total. And that gives us a total crew complement by simply multiplying the established crew complements by the quantity of ships. And that gives us a rather modest 21,570,400 troops. But the entire Covenant fleet doesn't number 43 ships now, does it? Regret's fleet, the one that attacked Earth, numbered 15 ships.
Something's not right. The fleet that destroyed Reach was 50 times this size.
The fleet that destroyed Reach was 50 times this size. It's likely an exaggeration, so let's say 500 ships. The fleet that protected High Charity numbered in the hundreds, as it is quoted as being, so let's say another 500. That's 1,000 ships. But humanity were thought to have 2,000 ships at the start of the war, and it is widely accepted that the Covenant laughably outnumbered us. So this number is likely on the very, very low side, so let's say around 6,000 ships. That's still being rather conservative. Now all we have to do is multiply out the crew complement for the 43 ships across a fleet of 6,000 with the same distribution of classes, and we will have our total Covenant ship complement. And with that distribution of ships, along with those crew complements multiplied out, that gives us a little over 3 billion troops. If we now add this to the population of High Charity at 7.5 billion, and the Covenant species populations, and we get 71,462,823,255. Seriously, 7.5 billion on High Charity, 3 billion crew complement, and nearly 61 billion Covenant species population. Totals a staggering 71 billion coveys. They had 71 billion pre-war, they had 32 billion post-war. That's over 39 billion Covenant troops killed at the hands of humanity. In all seriousness, no one, not even the UNSC or the Office of Naval Intelligence, truly knew the scale of the Covenant. We were fighting a foe we barely understood. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and outperformed in practically every single way we could be. Humanity was quite literally the underdog. The amount of misinformation and propaganda that reached the public during this 3-decade war likely gave the masses an extremely jaded view of just how dire the situation really was. This was orchestrated and completely intentional. This is what's so alarming, even scary, about the Office of Naval Intelligence and their ability to manipulate the masses. But what I find infinitely more scary is that even with all of their intelligence gathering, their advanced AIs, their stealth corvettes, classified programs and black projects, with all of the most powerful tools humanity had to offer, even Oni had no real palpable concept as to the true scale, strength and ferocity of the Covenant. Our fight with the Covenant could have easily ended on so many occasions if it weren't for the hand of fate influencing events from afar, and the hand of a hero holding us from falling into the abyss. Thanks for watching. Stick your comment down below and I look forward to what you have to say. I want to give a quick shout out to the Installation 00 Patreon supporters: Nathan the Silent Cartographer, Michael, Brian and Sebastian the Holders of the Mantle, Justin, Darian and Ty my Reclaimers, Zach, Deep Cover and Verbal Statue my Metarchs, and all of the other patrons that have jumped aboard to support the channel recently. I literally cannot put it into words how much it means to me. And again, a huge shout out to Halo Canon for this collaboration. It has truly been a pleasure working with you, and I hope we can touch base again in the near future. Don't forget, if you want to see the human side of this explored by Halo Canon, pop over to Installation 00 and watch his video over on my channel. For now, I'll hand you back to your usual host, and thanks again for watching.
Hey there, Canonites. Thanks again for watching. I had so much fun collaborating with Installation 00. He picked this topic. I would have never thought to dive into this and do so with such depth. So, again, be sure to go over to his channel, Installation 00, watch the human side of things, produced by me, of course, and throw him a subscription. He's more than earned it. He does some amazing videos. Take my word for it. Or actually, better yet, check them out and find out for yourself.